Good morning, folks. I'd just like to welcome you here today just to our ninth annual Men's Health webinar. Well, when I say webinar, it's a first ever webinar. Normally we're doing this in person. Unfortunately, due to the restrictions at the moment, we are where we are. But look, it's going to be a fun-filled morning with a lot of very interesting guests, and we have a little bit of fun at the end as well. So without further ado, I'm going to firstly ask you to welcome Lord Mayor Councillor Kevin Savage, who is going to say a few words of introduction, and then we'll come back to me, and then we will take things from there. Thank you.
So just wish to welcome everybody along this morning. I think as Mark pointed out, this is the first webinar. I know this has been done in person before, so I suppose this is going to be the new norm for a while yet. Everything been done on Zoom. So as Mark had said, this event has been run for 9 years, and it aims to improve the health and well-being of our male community. As everybody knows, this year has been the most challenging year yet for our community due to COVID, and the reasons for this event and other activities moving to the new norm of virtual connections. And as the pointed out during the day, this pandemic has had a massive impact on people's well-being from all different sections, but I know the focus is on males today, so we'll deal with that. So therefore, I would encourage you all to look after your health and well-being and try to stay positive. There is brighter days ahead. There is lights at the end of the tunnel. And just as an aside, I was able to book my own vaccine this morning. So, you know, we are making good progress there. So I really hope you enjoy this morning's webinar. You have some great speakers. I know you have Professor Luke O'Neill and also Andrew Ryan. So I hope you find this interesting this morning, interesting and informative. So Mark, if I just hand back over to you now.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Much appreciated. Folks, just to give you a little bit of a background, like I said, this is our ninth piece of work working around men's health. So what we've been doing over the last number of years, we've had a number of projects where we worked on our physical fitness, we've worked on aspects of dementia, and we've worked on different aspects of health that affect men. So this year, just the year that it is, we thought we'd base it around COVID, we'd base it around vaccines. And then we'd also base it around those people who are heavily involved within society, who are actually making a difference to all the bits and pieces of work that's going on in the community. So, firstly, I would actually like to thank our funders for this, because all these things, no matter what, they all take a bit of money to make things happen. So we have a number of main contributors to this. So the Public Health have funded this, Southern Health and Social Care Trust, Newry and Mourne Council, Mid Ulster Council, and Armagh, Banbridge and Craigavon Council have all generously funded this package that we have here today. So first person I'm going to ask to come on screen is Stephen McCleary from Armagh Men's Shed. And we're going to get through some questions with Stephen. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion about his role within society and the work that's ongoing at the moment. So Stephen, can I just ask you to put your camera on there, please? So Stephen, just want to welcome you here today.
This is all you find all this carry on Zoom and webinars.
It's so different. It's so different. Well, look, ultimately, we'll look forward to getting back in person, because I think we've realized over the last number of months, to make a real difference, it's all about connections and it's all about working through people. And yes, look, Zoom, Teams, whatever it is, we have to make do at the moment. But what it is we'll just get on with it. So, Stephen, just today, you're part of the Armagh Men's Shed. Can you tell me what you do as a group and why do you do it?
Well, we started around, I think, 2012, late 2011. I just seen the concept in Dundalk. I just thought it was the bee's knees. It was the thing to do at Armagh. I very quickly got off the ground in Armagh. And it's basically a haven for men of all ages who may be retired, unemployed, or just at a loose end. It's a safe place to come and just have a bit of crack in the company of other men.
And what type of things do you do in the shed?
Woodworks mostly hands-on stuff is the main thing the men want to do. But it's run by the men. Every project sort of decided by the men. It's up to them what they want to do. But it's all hands-on woodwork and repairs and upcycling, making buddy benches and stuff like that, you know.
And who would you do that for? Who do you produce them materials for?
Well, we would have our own wee craft stalls there 3 or 4 different times of the year during the seasons. So summer seasons, you have the benches. Spring, you have the flower boxes and board boxes, stuff like that. Christmas, you have the wee crafts for snowmen and things. But a lot of the work we would do would be for local schools and nursing homes, you know, repairing benches, repairing furniture, outside furniture, weeding their gardens, stuff like that, just something hands-on, because the whole idea is that we're giving the men a different focus. And to see when you're a volunteer in your local community, it's the best thing for your own mental health as well, like, you know.
No, it sounds like an awful lot of good work that you're doing there at the moment. So whenever lockdown came upon us last March, how did you cope during lockdown? What did you do initially? Did you have any sort of telephone conversations, or did you have online programs? What type of work did you engage with at the main then?
The big issue with the lockdown at the very start, we decided to close the shed completely until we got good enough guidance. And because we are members of the Irish Men's Shed Association, we were able to get very quick guidance from them, you know. So we locked down, but there was still a few bits and pieces to do. And we allowed some of the younger members to come in who wouldn't have been as vulnerable to just fiddle away. But when things got dragged on, we thought maybe it was going to be for a few months, but when things dragged on, we decided to just lock the shed down fully, which is very detrimental to the men's mental health, you know.
I can well imagine that, because they didn't probably have the opportunities to do what they've been doing for the last number of years. And what sort of age groups did you have in the men that came in? What, like, is there a broad range of age groups?
Well, the youngest would be in their 40s, maybe late 30s. The oldest is 87. Patsy would be our oldest member. And there's a lot of the men who would they were at a loss whenever lockdown came about. They didn't know what to do. It was back to the same situation where before they joined the men's shed, they'd be just sitting watching television or just sitting doing nothing, you know, and then they head out of their wives or their children, for want of a better word, you know. So this is the sort of, I didn't want them to revert back to the old routine again of moping about the house. So we very quickly got a program together of from WhatsApp. Sean Toner had to set up a WhatsApp group among us all, and then the Irish Men's Shed Association had developed exercise plans to the website very quickly. Just something to keep the minds occupied, you know. And there's regular webinars where they get involved in. And then there was a Northern Men's Shed Zoom meeting where they get involved in. And that just kept them sort of upbeat, you know.
And was that something that you would look forward to on a weekly basis, that you had a number of set programs that you would do each week?
Yeah, each Friday they had the exercise from Steel Blue. It was an All Ireland connection on Zoom for the exercise. And then every Tuesday they had different aspects of mental health, from making jam, believe it or not, till cooking shows and stuff like that. It was just great crack, like, you know. Look forward to the webinars. We started our own wee program then again with I had seen something on Facebook about painting by numbers, and I said to myself, maybe that's something we could use for the boys' mental health. And there's 12 of them doing painting by numbers, and I can't keep up with them. You can't get, obviously the stuff comes from China in these places, and it takes 6 weeks to come, and they just love it. And there's some great examples of the painting. I even got stuck on it myself, and I'm sort of addicted to it now. So we plan to have an exhibition and a sale of the painting by numbers that the boys have done whenever restrictions allow us, like, you know.
Please God.
Here's an example of one. I'll just show you this. Here's an example of one. We can see it there.
That's excellent.
You know, I'd actually done one of a sort of a half-naked woman, and it was very tasteful. It wasn't a bad photograph, but when I put it on Facebook, there was 50-odd requests for it. I sold it within two hours, I'd say, from putting it up.
It's
so
amazing.
I've since got somebody to do another one the exact same. But just having a crack with them, you know, just sharing ideas with the painting by numbers and stuff like that. It's just all about keeping them busy, you know.
It sounds very worthwhile. You know, I'm sure we're going to see some of these photographs or these prints going around in the black market soon. It'll be worse than the red diesel.
It's actually so easy for people like myself who wouldn't be no good at art. It's just, I think it's class to do, you know.
It seems something that's very therapeutic, and people get a lot of release from it.
Yeah, oh, definitely. You know, some of them, I had to get them all magnifying glass because some of the numbers are very hard to see for the ordinary eye, and never mind somebody that's in their 80s. Patsy just loves doing it, But I had to get him a good magnifying glass with a light on it so we could see where he's going, you know. But stuff like that, it's just keeping their mental. You're getting questions from them all the time about their mental health. So lucky enough, we got a wee job to do this just the start of March, sir, up in the wee local nursery school. They wanted the back fence repainted. They wanted their play equipment tidied up and rejigged and different wee things, and the vegetable garden dug. So 6 of the men are up there, and they're able to do that as in a social distance way, you know. And they get a bloody what do you call it, a bacon soda every morning, so they're quite happy. They wouldn't get that at home. They wouldn't really have that unhealthy at home.
We'll probably have a couple of people, maybe the likes of Elaine Devlin online at the moment, who's probably cringing when she hears all that unhealthy food. But you know, within life, we do need our little bits of treats at different stages. It doesn't do any harm just to have the odd little treats. But tell me this, Stephen, you'd have been very involved in a lot of work during the lockdown yourself. Unfortunately, how did you contribute to the community? What did you do as a group? And also, I know you're also part of West Armagh Consortium. If you explain to us as well what you do within an umbrella organisation, and how have you made a difference?
Well, the consortium, West Armagh Consortium, I've been involved with since the start of 2004, and we decided very quickly to step up to the market. We organised a COVID response group, and the replies we got from people who wanted to volunteer was phenomenal. It was just would have done your heart good. The many people are coming to volunteer to help out. So we would have looked after, I think over the whole lockdown, maybe 400 families, and as well as that, we would source funding to deliver PPE to hospitals as far away as Gelvin, Enniskillen, Belfast, Newry, you know, Daisy Hill. We supplied most of them with their PPE at a very critical stage, as well as all the local nursing homes. So it was great to even know people were just so great at doing that. And we also had a fundraising page which raised thousands of pounds. No, it would have done your heart good to see that the amount of people wanting to help. The men shed fellas actually were on board, and then were able to drive. Were there, you know, at the end of a phone, whenever I phone them, will you deliver such a food hamper to somebody, or will you buddy up with a certain person to do it, get their groceries or their prescriptions and stuff like that there, you know. So it was only a phone call away. You had help at your hand, especially the boys in the shed. They love doing that, you know.
It seemed to be an immense amount of work. I'm not from Armagh, I'm from Dungannon, and the work replicated within the communities was so immense. And ultimately, you can't put a value in that on people's mental well-being and the work and the contribution that you're making to communities.
That was done your heart good to see that, you know. Like I was the volunteer coordinator, and I had a notebook full of names and phone numbers. Just one of them notepads. It was coming 200 names, and I wanted to make sure I used as many people as possible all the time. And it was kind of hard to get them all involved, but we did. We managed to get most of them involved. And
I suppose ultimately, like if you're making a difference, there's also that about your own positive mental health as well. So that if you're feeling that you're contributing to the community, you're making a difference. So the likes of the Take 5 message that we would be very keen to get out at the moment, that would be very much a core point of your work that you're doing.
Yeah, I'm actually running, as part of consortium, running a chronic pain course with the help of 2 girls from the Verve in Craigavon, and it's just there's 17 clients on it, for want of a better word, and they're there every night. Listen till the Take 5 message it's been adapted specifically for chronic pain people, you know, how to self-manage their chronic pain. And one example, even last night, there was a girl on doing mandala training. And 2 of our people would be in severe pain most of the time. And when they get stuck into the mandala drawing, their pain went, say, from a 6 down to a 1 during it all. They just forgot about their pain. They were that engrossed in the drawing. So we try and bring something useful every week to the chronic pain sessions just to manage that, because it's hard to listen to some of the stories with people who suffer chronic pain and how they're not able to manage without opioids and stuff like that, you know. So
it's amazing the difference when you start to affect the mind, the effect that it can have on the body.
Yeah. And another thing we started there, Mark, was we got funding through the Warm, Well and Connected program, just to do what we wanted to do ourselves. So we decided having a chat with people. We organised a Makaton course, level 1 and level 2 Makaton, which is the sign language course for special needs children. And we had 24 people at 4 different classes, and there was 100% attendance throughout the whole program. It was the first time we ever done a program that was a total 100% from start to finish. You know how hard it is yourself to get people to
buy
follow through in programs. This was 100% from start to finish, and I'm mad keen to get into level 3 and level 4. Like. No, so that makes them easier communicating with their kids and all, you know.
Yeah, well, it's all them little differences, because you're making a difference within a household, and the difference between and improving the relationship between a parent and their child. Like, you're making an invaluable difference, especially now within children maybe mightn't have been able to get access to schools the last number of months.
Yeah, and we've a great bunch of volunteers in the consortium as well. We even organised a lovely wee pack for them to give to every participant after, which was a nice wee surprise for them as well. Like. But I asked yesterday for a case study, and I got 15 case studies back within 2 hours, and they nearly make you cry, some of the stuff, how much they enjoyed doing the course and what difference it made to their kids and themselves, being able to communicate. Now, some of the girls are working in a school setting, but I think 19 of them all together were working one-to-one with their own kids. Like. And the way they're able to communicate, like, for example, I'm a carer for my wee grandson. He has cerebral palsy, and he's learned 3 signs within a week, and that was a big milestone for him, like, because he can't communicate. He learned 3 simple signs within a week, and I just thought that was great, you know.
It makes some difference, and especially, I suppose, because it's very personal to yourself and it relates to the heart, and the difference that you're making to your own family. It must be immense pride that, you know, that you're making that difference.
Yeah, but you're actually helping yourself. Like, I had a wee bit of a breakdown. I had a bit of a low ebb there about 3 or 4 weeks ago, but to see with the Makaton and the wee fella learning stuff, it lifts your spirits all the time. You know, when you're actually helping somebody else, you're helping yourself as well. Like, you know.
Yeah. Well, just a lot of these programs you'd have been doing online. How did you engage the men who might have been used to working with Zoom or Teams or whatever? How did you encourage them to buy into the process of going online, whether go onto an iPad or go onto a laptop or going onto the phone? How did you educate men in the first place?
Well, there's definitely some crack doing that. I'm just thinking of a few examples. I'm not mentioning any names, but one fella couldn't even turn a computer on, and we were able to get laptops for the community. We used laptops for the community, that, you know, for the homeschool and stuff. We were inundated with laptops. People donated laptops to get repaired, to give to schools and whatnot, or people for schools. And there was an abundant supply of them, so we were able to bring them around to some of the men. And now, one fella had to go to the house before the Zoom meeting, set him up, go back in my own house and get him, you know, to try him in, and then go back home and say, click that button, click that button. It was good crack doing it, but now he looks forward to it there every week. That man's 78. Would never used a computer in his life. He's just one example of how much things have changed. Like, this Zoom is going to be the future from now on for a lot of meetings. You know, like, we're involved in Healthy Living Alliance, and that entail going to meetings in Derry, torn around Derry, Kilkeel, or Belfast, or up in Northampton. Now it's going to be them. Community meetings are going to be on Zoom all the time, so it'll be more productive, I think.
Well, I think people will. There's 2 points I would say there. Now, you have obviously the personal connection of actually been in a room and shaking somebody's hand. Please God, we're going to be allowed to shake people's hands and have a cup of tea. But if you can't make it for whatever reason, also having the option of maybe being able to jump on Zoom, that's going to make a difference, like you said, going down the line too.
Yeah. And then as regards the men said that the no interest at the end of the phone every time, you know, our funding finished up there way back, but I'm in furlough through funding that the men should have raised themselves. But I'm at the end of the phone anytime they had a problem.
Yeah, it makes a massive difference. And, you know, from a statutory point of view, myself and my colleague Francis, the work that yourself and others do within the community is just simply invaluable, and the community would be lost without the likes of yourself and others making that difference. But Stephen, I know you have to head off soon because you're actually going for your second vaccination. Would you tell us just a wee bit about that? Had you any trepidation going for your first one? Are you now looking forward to your second one? How are you feeling? about
I'm
the
looking forward
vaccination
to the
process?
second one, surely. The reason I'm getting it so early, like I'm a young fella, you can tell me looking at him there, can't you? The reason I'm getting it so early is because I'm a carer for my grandson. So we got our second, the first one 12 weeks ago, and I was that busy talking to the nurse, I didn't even notice it came in my arm, you know. I actually recognised the nurse from one of the tracks for the hospice. I do a bit of work for the Southern Area Hospice, Caminos and stuff, and she was one of my last tracks. So it was good to have a chat to her. Before I knew it, she had needed in night and I was away. Didn't even realise it. But I'm definitely looking forward to the second because I think it's very important that if we're going to cut this virus down, people have to get the vaccine, because you seen the program television last night as soon as lockdown opened in England, so they're on top of each other again. It's human nature that's going to decide what's going to happen in the future here, you know.
It is. The future is very much in our own hands. So I think we need to be very proactive of how we're going to take things forward. So, but it's the likes of the work that you're doing on the ground that is just simply invaluable. And that's why it was so important that we felt that you would come on today just to explain the role, not only what yourself, your Armagh Men's Shed do within the community, but the wider community, excuse me, organisations that just add that value to society. But no, Stephen, listen, I just want to thank you very much. Like I say, I know you're rushing off now for your head over to South Lakes Leisure Centre for the next job, but just want to wish you all the best.
Just watch this space now. We're planning a major relaunch with the Men's Shed whenever restrictions allow, because we want to focus a lot more on younger men. This is where your own Southern Area Men's Health Group will come in will help us with our recruitment drive, because there's going to be a lot of men at a loose end very soon, between unemployment and redundancies, forced redundancies, for want of a better word, you know.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing a major relaunch, so for looking for younger men to get involved, because there's something for everybody down there, you know.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like, that's something, like, obviously in partnership with yourselves that we'll be supporting, and I'm sure the trust and the PHA and everybody else will be rolling in behind, because look, we have to make a difference, and the evidence is there. The evidence of the last 12 months that the difference that you've made on the ground, you know, like there's no bigger argument for how beneficial you've been to society.
We've also got a new allotment market, I forgot to mention, behind KFC in partnership with Triangle Housing Association. So that's going to be a community hub with buildings sort of dedicated to looking after young men, said back to employment programs and stuff like that. There's even a facing retirement program for older men. So that's going to be a major thing behind KFC. Triangle's involved, and another group called Arc Housing Association are involved. They're putting good money into it, so it'll be a nice spot for the future, you know, something to look forward to.
There'll be some contrast and smells between the garden and all the work you're doing in there in KFC.
And the junk in KFC.
But maybe people will smell the food that you're doing and growing and what have you, like, and you'll convert them and you'll make the likes of Elaine and Kathy Devlin very happy in what they're doing.
Well, then they're doing cooking programs.
Well, that's it. But look, that's all work that we're going to progress with you down the line. So, no, Stephen, listen, thanks very much for joining us this morning.
No problem. Look forward to the video on YouTube.
Yeah, this will be, like we've already noted by Collie earlier on, this is all going to be recorded and we'll be uploading it onto the council websites and the men's forum, and possibly Men's Shed if you want as well. Like, we can all link that up and people can refer back to this down the line and listen to the very invaluable advice that you've been articulating for the last 10 to 15 minutes. So thanks very much, Stephen. I'm just going to ask you at this stage if you just mute yourself and turn off your video.
No problem. Thank you. All the best.
We're going to move on to our next segment. Our next segment is an initiative that basically originated out of Dublin, and it's from a guy called Keith Kelly. And we're going to play the video here first, and you're going to get an understanding of where Keith has come from. And then we'll take a few questions after that there, because Keith has very kindly joined us online, so that we can address any wee issues or any wee thoughts that you may have as that'll arise during the video. So if I can just ask Collie if you're ready to roll with the video, if you want to play that forward now for me.
Morning, my name's Keith Kelly. I'm the founder of Jumpers for Goalposts. I'm delighted to be able to speak at your event this morning. Jumpers for Goalposts is a volunteer-led movement that encourages men of all ages, backgrounds, races to come together for an old school game of ball using jumpers for goalposts. Jumpers for Goalposts evolved in 2017 after I wrote a poem reflecting on my own childhood I was sitting in the garden overlooking the field where I used to play as a kid. And it was a summer's day, beautiful out. The kids were off school, and yet the field was empty, and it left me with a sort of a heavy heart. So I wrote a poem called "No More Jumpers Thrown Down," and it went viral. And I received messages from all over the world, and from professional footballers, elderly people. You know, it seemed to just resonate with people. So I tried a social experiment, should we say, and I put an offer out on Facebook to see if anyone was interested in coming down to the field and having an old school game of ball. And the response I got was massive, and 70 people turned up on a Sunday morning to have a game of ball. The response since then has been massive. We've had games in Galway, we've had games in Wexford, Kildare, and many other places around the country. We've had guys like international footballers like Richard Sadler, Keith Fatty, Arthur Paul Howard arriving down into a housing estate to a little patch of grass to join many men having a game of ball. I suppose Jumpers for Goalposts was an experiment for me, because I would have suffered hugely with my own mental health for a great number of years. In 2008, I was stabbed numerous times by an intruder in my house, which was near fatal. And over the next 5 or 6 years, my mental health deteriorated to the extent where I tried to take my own life. So after that, I wanted to sort of find out why I was feeling like this, and why I was carrying so much shame, and why isolation became my friend at the time. So I went on lots of self-development courses. I got involved with a charity called Suicide Survive, who run mental health programs and well-being programs around the country. So I trained up as a facilitator. You know, I had no self-confidence, my self-esteem was gone. So, you know, I started to go on all these workshops, and then I actually trained up as a facilitator. I facilitated mental health programs in prisons and communities around the country. I went back to study. I left school at 15. I went back to study. I went to Maynooth University to study counselling skills. But for a long time, isolation was my friend. So I know what it's like to feel lonely, and that sense of happiness just disappeared. And I wanted some sort of thing to bring people together, to reconnect people. And football for me is a great way of reconnecting with people and bringing people together. Well, what happens with a game Jumpers for Goalposts is, you know, you put a post out. As I said, the response is always great. We sort of initially organised games around Men's Health Week to bring men together. And, you know, a game of Jumpers for Goalposts is exactly what it was when we were kids, you know. I think why it works is because there's no pressure, you know. You don't have to train twice a week to turn up for a game on a Sunday. And I know games go on within communities in, say, leisure centres and stuff. But even a £5 a week or £7 a week, whatever it is, to go to a leisure centre can become a huge barrier to people, you know. So Jumpers for Goalposts is free. If we organise a game for 11 o'clock, you can rock up at 11:15, 20 past 11, and just jump on the side that's maybe not doing too well at the minute. People leave their ego on the sideline. You get out and just have a laugh. There's no pressure to be a good footballer. It's just all about having a laugh and reconnecting. I've organised games and I've met people who I hadn't seen from 30 years ago, from school, just turning up, and you're able to share stories about life and where you are at the minute. And if there is people struggling, you know, we've been able to signpost them to the services they need to go to. I've been able to bring people on the programs that I facilitate, so they can get the tools to maybe cope better with what they're struggling with. I think it's popular because, as I say, it's free. You go to a normal game of football and there's that pressure to win, you know. And Jumpers for Goalposts is all about having a laugh. You know, people come along, they watch, you don't have to join in, you can play for 10 minutes, and when you start getting tired, you can drop out, there's always somebody else to come in. You know, there's no heavy tackles, it's really all about having a bit of crack. And when you let down the barriers of being the macho man and stuff like that, it opens up the possibility that, you know, you can share your experiences with people. You don't have to expose yourself to the world, you know. But and also it's I suppose it's like a bit of networking, because I've seen people making connections that, you know, after games when we're having a chat, that, okay, listen, I may not have a bit of work. Some guy might be able to say, well, listen, I can give you a day here. Or some guy who's feeling a bit isolated, he's been able to meet up with someone he's reconnected with for a cup of coffee on a Wednesday. So there's just that sort of magic that happens, that, you know, there's no drink involved, because I suppose isolation for me still sort of happens. I'm sober 7 years now, and even if you go to a funeral nowadays, as soon as the person goes into the ground, the next thoughts is, right, Mom, everyone off to the pub. I know we'd go home, and there is that sense of isolation. So Jumpers for Goalposts, it's about getting people outdoors to enjoy themselves, and seeing the value of getting outdoors, and reconnecting with people and sharing stories. Because I fully believe if you open up and share your experience, if you're at a place where you can do that, you can help people to open up as well, you know, and reach out for help. COVID has had a big impact on Jumpers for Goalposts, because we had in 2020 in June a national campaign where we were trying to get a game of Jumpers for Goalposts going on in every community in Ireland for Men's Health Week, and raise awareness around mental health. We were involved with, UEFA had contacted us. We were involved with the launch of Euro 2020, where we were going to put on games in the lead up to Euro 2020. But we've still been able to stay connected with people, you know. Sometimes if I throw up an old photograph on the Jumpers for Goalposts Facebook page, it starts conversations. We have elderly people clambering up into attics looking for old photographs, and when they throw up an old photograph or give it to me, you know, it starts so many conversations about, oh, that's my grandfather in the picture, and I never knew he played ball, and so on, you know. And we've also been able to stay connected with people because we've started, yourself and Michael, who does all the social media work, Michael Nolan, digitaldub.ie. We've started our sort of podcast, a visual podcasts, where we chat with people and we dip into their lives and through music and stuff. And they've been able to share their experience with us, and that keeps people connected with us and keeps the conversation going. The plans for the future are, hopefully, when the world opens up again, to get games back in communities. You know, I've seen guys who moved into new housing estates and using Jumpers for Goalposts as a sort of a vehicle for getting to know their new neighbours. So yeah, we hope to get back out into communities and travel around the country and have a laugh and share conversations and stories with people from all around the four corners of Ireland. I hope today is a real success for you with the adventures we're putting on, and I hope to see you in the future. Very best of luck with all you do.
Give my ball any autographs.
Folks, I'm going to ask Keith if you would maybe switch on your camera just at this stage. And just take off your microphone. That's it. Perfect. We're just waiting for Keith to come on screen. Folks, what I would say is, having watched that video already, when we watched that there as a group, as an organizing group the first time around, we found we found that very moving. We found that very emotional. A lot of the work that was going on there, and it resonated very much with us. So we thought it was very important that we obviously show the video, but we're also going to get Keith to come online here now and just to talk through some of his experiences. Just Keith, can I ask you? Obviously, we're now coming hopefully out of lockdown. Please God, with the restrictions been lifted. How did you reconnect with people whenever you went through your darker moments in life and those experiences? And how do you find that's going to be relevant to us going forward?
Well, being honest with you, Mark, I didn't really connect with people when I was going through my dark period in life, and that was the problem, I suppose. I was suffering with post-traumatic stress disorder, and I was afraid of the dark. I was afraid of people. I felt I'd let down people. I felt there was a huge burden to people. As I said, to the extent that I tried to take my own life because I felt it no value to people. And I suppose then, thankfully, I'm still here. And I wanted to find out why I obviously knew why I was feeling that way, but what made me tick as a person. So I went and done lots of self-development programs and, I say, wellness programs and workshops and stuff. And I found that I had all my life been creative. I used to write poetry and do art, but I used to always throw it in the wardrobe and stuff, and thinking, who the hell would want to look at this or be interested in this? But over time, I suppose I started getting my self-confidence back and my self-esteem, and my creativity came to the fore. And I suppose I just took a risk in writing poetry and put it out and stuff. And I suppose Jumps for Goalposts, I think, gives people the opportunity to empower themselves. There was a guy, we had a game early in the infancy of Jumps for Goalposts out my way, Dublin, and we had a guy arrive. It was 11 o'clock Sunday morning, and this guy come up to me, and I'd never met him. He's after arriving from Galway to see what this Jumps for Goalposts was all about. He was a very anxious guy. You know, I knew by speaking to him, he hadn't got much self-confidence, but he was after making that huge effort to come down to a game and get involved with people he didn't know. And since then, I've seen this guy go back to Galway and bring Jumpers for Goalposts to Galway and empowering himself and becoming a community leader. And that's what Jumpers for Goalposts can do, you know.
Well, it's very powerful. And that's, folks, just to let you all know that there is a link to Keith's videos in the chat box if you want to record them. And if you have any questions for Keith, fire them into the box as well. And we already have a couple of questions as well. But just whenever you brought up the fact that the program developed and expanded to Galway, you have a national campaign for Jumpers for Goalposts. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, we, I suppose, to all the videos we were sharing from the games, we start getting a lot of attention. I'm involved with a charity called Suicide Survive, who run wellbeing programs, and I facilitate a program there myself. So we sort of came together with them, and we said, look, what can we do to raise awareness around men's health? So we said we'd devise a national campaign. Now, it was to coincide with Men's Health in 2020, and we were trying to get a game in every county in Ireland for communities. And I know on the day we would have had about 15 counties involved, and in Dublin alone there would have been about 20 games. So you're talking a lot of men getting out. And look, football is the tool that gets sort of the hook that gets people there. But once they're there, I'll say it's all about reconnecting with people. I have the guy who does all my video stuff, I went to school with 25 years ago, and he lives in my community, and we would have only nodded on the street. And he's not into football. He came along to one of the very first games. He's interested in photography. So he said, do you mind if I take a few photographs here? And I said, no. And since then, me and him have become the best of pals, because my skill is probably mobilizing people and getting people together, and his skill set is the videos. So we work together, and that's what Jumps for Goalposts is all about, supporting each other, you know.
Well, just when we're talking about that, obviously that's something that myself and my colleague Francis would like to expand and support up here. Is that something we can do on the ground and get communities involved in the north here, particularly in the Armagh and Bridge Craigavon area, involved, and Newry and Mourne and Mid Ulster Council areas, get people involved in the ground and do this? Will this be an easy project? Not easy project, but it'll be slightly challenging, but how challenging and in what ways for us to get this up and running? Because the benefits are just simply immense.
Oh, do you know, it really, I have to be honest, Mark, it's such a simple project. I mean, I used it myself as a social experiment to see would, are people interested in coming together. It really is just a matter of putting a post out on Facebook. There's absolutely no structure. Jumps for Goalposts, it's the exact same as when we were kids. People just arrive. As I say, if I organise a game at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, you can rock up at 20 past and just jump on the side who's not doing too well. The game, when we see people flagging, you know, because we're all getting on a bit, I would have men from 18 up to 70 playing, 70 years of age. We shout next goal the winner. So it's not about winning. It's not about the pressure of being a good footballer. If someone falls over, you pick them up, you have a laugh. Like years ago when Jumps for Goalposts, when I was a kid, it was always, unfortunately, the tubby kid or the kid who was no use was stuck in goals. Now because we're all getting on a bit, the hand goes up here, I'll get in there for 5 minutes, you know, and it's all about supporting each other. And afterwards then we all just sit there and we talk about life, and if someone's struggling, I can signpost them to the right services, and that's what it's all about. You know, I've seen the hardest men in my communities arrive down, and you just leave the ego on the sideline, and you just play ball and you just have a laugh. And you know, for a long time I lost the ability to laugh, and I tell you, it's a powerful tool.
Just like I said, having listened to you today and having watched the video previously, it just brings me back to my own childhood whenever I would have been playing football, and you score a goal and you just wheel away and you had the Kenny Dalglish celebration. And it was the best feeling in the world. And maybe that's just what we need to just get ourselves back to get ourselves out of the, for the want of a better term, the rat race that we're all in within the moment, that we have those moments of just escapism and just to be ourselves.
Do you know, Mark, as adults, there's a period in life where we go to adulthood and we're in that rat race, and we lose ourselves within that. So getting out with a gang of lads, wearing your old Arsenal jersey or Liverpool, whatever jersey it is, and thinking you're Kevin Keegan or Liam Brady or whoever you are, and just, you know, going back to them days and the freedom to enjoy a bit of laughter without actually the pressure of someone on the sideline giving out to you because you misplaced a pass.
It doesn't matter.
It's a wonderful experience. It really is.
It just doesn't matter. I'm sure that one of our panelists will be delighted that you've actually mentioned Chipper Brady. Mickey McKenna, our youth action panelist, will be absolutely over the moon as an Arsenal supporter. But Keith, look, I just want to thank you for coming on today. Like it's simply inspirational, and it's something that myself and Francis and all our colleagues are going to incorporate on our plans going forward, because the difference it makes is just, it's unbelievable. So again, just to
listen, Mark, you know, when the world opens up, I'll be up there. I'll be on the pitch with you, and I'll bring a few of my crew, and we can. It's all about sharing stories then afterwards, you know, and because maybe we're all so different in some ways, but we're also the same as well.
Exactly.
So yeah, we'll be up there. Jumpers for Goalposts.
I'll hold you to that. I'll definitely hold you to that. Well, listen, I would just like to say, I just want to thank you again for jumping on this morning, and by all means stay on, because we have another guest coming on here now, so you might maybe have a couple of wee questions for him also. So At this stage, Keith, I'm going to ask you to stop sharing your video, and if you turn your mute your mic, and then we'll maybe get talking to you later
Will
on.
do, Mark, and thanks very much. Yeah.
No problem. Thank you. Folks, just a reminder that Keith's video is, the link to the second part of that is in the chat box. Francis has put that in there. And a large part of this presentation today is going to be recorded and is going to be put on, it's going to be put online. So our next guest is, I'm just going to ask Luke if he would just maybe knock on his microphone and knock on his camera. This next person that I'm going to introduce you is Professor Luke O'Neill. He's an immunologist from Trinity College in Dublin, professor in biochemistry, I believe. This is the man I came across on a program called Off the Ball, sports program down south about 11 months ago, when he talked about COVID and the effects just within society. And he spoke with such clarity and he spoke with such authority that I just thought, this man's just inspirational. And this has been kind of a shining light for me going through the last 12 months, because we've had a number of dark days, and just the logic and the sense and the direction and the idea that things will get better. So if I could just ask Luke just to come on screen here for me now, and we have a number of questions that have been posted by panelists and by participants previously, and I'm just going to put that to Luke.
Yeah, hi Mark.
Luke, how are you?
Not too bad.
So look, again, just want to say thanks very much for jumping on today. It's
No problem.
hopefully we get you a few more followers on Twitter, because just your information,
Yes.
it's just enlightening. But we'll start at the beginning. COVID, should we have seen this coming? Because Barack Obama, was it 6-7 years ago, had a task force in the States, and he talked about this. So is this something we should have seen coming?
It's very hard to predict, Mark, in truth, because I mean, I'm an immunologist as my actual specialty. I'm a biochemist, but I'm also an immunologist. And I would be going to these conferences and you'd meet all the viral guys and they'd all go, oh, there's a pandemic coming. And we go, nah, we don't believe you. You know, you're a doom and gloom kind of guy, you know. But they would often say, and our big fear was flu, actually. We thought there'd be a huge flu pandemic. There was one in 2009, for example, the swine flu, you know. But it was hard to predict, really, because there was always a chance of it. But you couldn't put a number on the chance of it. You know what I mean? In other words, there's a chance of an asteroid hitting the Earth as well, kind of thing. You know, and that's probably more likely than that. But even still, it was hard to know. Although there were those warnings. Yeah, I mean, we knew these coronaviruses, that they live in bats. We knew we were invading the bat's territory, you know, through industrial development and so on. So there was always a risk then of it jumping from a bat into a human, you know. But still, it was a very remote possibility, if the truth be told.
Well, I suppose it's here now, and it's just something that we just need to deal with, and we have been dealing with it for 12 months.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with it going forward. But in relation to today's event, obviously we're focusing on men. Has COVID any particular effect on men?
It does indeed, Mark. I mean, we knew once it began back in January 12 months ago, of course, as we all remember, you know, it was a brand new virus that had never infected humans before. You know what I mean? So it was really unusual in that sense. And we didn't know much about it, you know. We knew it was like SARS. So SARS is a very similar virus. And we thought it was going to be like SARS. Now, what happened with SARS was, again, it was from bats, interestingly, but SARS was easy to put out because if you had symptoms, you're infectious. You know what I mean? Whereas with this one, by the end of February, we realized you can spread this with no symptoms. That made it very difficult to control. Because how do you get someone to stay home? Because they're perfectly healthy and they're spreading the virus. That's the single most malicious aspect of this virus. We call it asymptomatic spread, you know. And what that meant was global lockdowns anyway, because you had to assume anybody was infected and spreading it, you know. And so we learned that early on. The second thing we learned, men are more badly affected than women. And that became very clear by about February time as well. March for definite, you know. So men, 60% higher risk of getting severe disease. Women have a 40% chance. You know what I mean? So we're a good third more vulnerable, men are, if you like, to this virus. Now, what that means is if a man gets infected with the same dose of virus as a woman, there's more of a chance of him developing a very severe disease, you know. And then the scientists said, well, why is this? Because as you know, I'm a scientist, so they began to dig into it to try to find out why. There's two reasons we think. One is the virus, as everybody probably knows by now, has these spikes, and the spikes stick into your lungs, you know, and infect you. They stick into a thing called ACE2 in your lungs. Now, it's a bit like a lock and a key going in, you know, And the virus has the key, it's the spike, opens the lock and it gets inside your lungs. That lock is called ACE2. Men have more ACE2. And it seems to be down to testosterone. Isn't that amazing? So testosterone regulates ACE2 and men have slightly more testosterone. So we have slightly more locks in our lungs, and that means the keys get in more readily. That's one reason, you know. The second reason, men are inclined to have other diseases like heart disease more than women. They have diabetes more. Men are unhealthy, sadly, more than women are generally in these types of diseases. And that puts you at high risk. Because if you have heart disease and you get this virus on board, it's beating up your lungs and your heart is already damaged, you know, because you got heart disease and you get a double punch, you know, and that's why men probably, we think, are more badly affected by this. So it is a more serious disease in men. Now remember, Mark, the good news is though, well, it's not good for the people who get it, by the way. It's very much down to age, you know, as we all know by now. This is a disease of older ages. And if you're under 50, you're pretty bulletproof, actually, you know, and small numbers do get sick, and we've got great sympathy with them, of course we do. But it's very rare that someone under 50 gets really sick. Very rare. There's the odd case here and there. Over 50, year by year, that ramps up and up. Get to your 80s, you have a 1 in 8 chance of getting severe disease, which is quite high, you know. And again, the men, now interesting, when the women go through menopause, they have the same risk as men. Isn't that interesting? So it looks as if there's something about estrogen in women that are protecting them, you know, and the estrogen is sort of beneficial. And when a woman goes through menopause, estrogen falls, and now they begin to look a bit like men in terms of risk, you know. So we know an awful lot about this, what we call the sex differences with this disease.
And what about the likes of minority groups, the likes of BME groups, BM groups?
Yeah.
Would they be more susceptible to these type of viruses at the moment?
Again, that was spotted very early on. Again, the doctors noticed this. Imagine you're in a hospital, right, Mark, and the patients are coming in their droves, and you can say, you know, what types of patients are they, men, women, etc. They noticed immediately the BAME groups, as we call them, you know, they were much more severely affected. Again, like a man, higher risk of severe disease. And the big question is, why is that as well? Now, one reason for this is it's socioeconomic, because it turns out that your severity of disease, if you put it that way, is often about the dose of virus you take on board. If you take a lot of virus on, that beats up your body and you get really sick, you know? And these groups were living in crowded accommodation that were getting much more doses of virus into them, you know, than someone saying living in a big fancy house with loads of rooms in it, you know? So they were getting sicker because the dose was higher. That was one reason. And they were going to work. I mean, these people in those groups had to keep working, you know, and they were getting infected in the workplace, you see. And look at the meat factories is a good example. I mean, that was a crowded environment, a lot of people together living in close quarters in their accommodation, badly paid workers, you know, like wildfire in that situation, you know. But the second reason is something genetic happening. And just like a man has more ACE2, you know, someone of African origin might have less of something else, you know, and we're looking at that. We're trying to find out the genetics of the differences between us that might make some people more susceptible.
So now that we know that we have obviously COVID among us at this stage, going forward, vaccines were developed pretty quick, and everyone was telling us back in March time of last year to get a vaccine could take 4 to 5 years. How come we have a vaccine? In reality, when I was following you on Twitter, you were talking about the Oxford-based vaccine within a matter of months.
Yeah.
How come the vaccines were developed that much quicker?
It is the most remarkable part of this story for immunologists like me, Mark. I mean, unprecedented, right? I mean, we went from not knowing this virus at all, which was like maybe, 13, 14 months ago now, to having 9 vaccines, not just 2 or 3, remember. There are 9 highly efficacious, highly safe vaccines, which are killing this virus dead. And we see Israel is doing great, the UK is doing great, as we know, the US, you know. So it's an amazing achievement, isn't it, really? Now, why did it happen? Well, necessity is the mother of invention. That's the first thing, right? All those labs all around the world in the universities, the Oxford vaccine was discovered in a university. It wasn't discovered in a drug company, you know. But all these labs and then all the big drug companies get involved. They put their shoulder to the wheel, right? And the only reason it went fast is money. It's a simple. They invested massive amounts of money to get this vaccine. What does money mean? It means more workers for the start, you know. And the good analogy I give is like if it takes a week for one man to paint your house, if you have 100 men, it's done in an hour. It's as simple as that. It was a numbers game, you know. They put loads of money, loads of people. They shifted factories over to make this stuff, you know. They got these clinical trials, tens of thousands of people. It was really just a massively energetic, I suppose, and committed effort. And then we get these vaccines. And of course, it is a concern. People say, oh, it's too fast. And they cut corners. No corners were cut with these vaccines. They're as clean as a whistle with their safety. Now, there are some issues which we can discuss if you like. But overall, very safe vaccines and very efficacious. These are like hammer blows to this virus. like 95% efficacy is a remarkable level of efficacy to see any vaccine, you know. So it's a huge triumph, and it wasn't a slam dunk, by the way. They could have got stuck in this process. And like one example is Sanofi, one of the world's biggest vaccine companies. They failed in getting a vaccine, you know, and they picked the wrong horse kind of thing. So it was never guaranteed either, by the way. So the relief we felt last November, Mark, when Pfizer announced that their vaccine was working, the relief we all felt in my business was huge, because I was thinking, oh, this will take another year, you know. So we all went, oh, great, we're on the way now, you know.
Well, I know from, again, following you on social media, whenever you felt relief, I felt relief. So the difference, the effect it had within society, and I'm sure I wasn't alone in that.
Yeah.
But you talk about these vaccines being tested, they're all equally tested, and they all, because like you say, we now have 9. And I think in the north here, we have 3 vaccines on the go at the moment. We have Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca.
Yep.
So they all meet a certain criteria. They all meet a standard, do they?
They do indeed. Yeah, I mean, the first thing is safety first, remember. And it's a very elaborate process, testing vaccines, any new medicine. I'm more involved in the therapeutic side of COVID, you know, anti-inflammatories and stuff. But any new medicine is really rigorously tested, because you don't want to be launching something into millions of people that's going to harm them, you know. So they're really stringent safety controls. Safety first, and then the second thing is efficacy, to make sure it's working, you know, and that's the trial. And lo and behold, they get the efficacy as well. So all 3 of them, remember, you'll see differences in these percentages here and there, you know, like one's 90, 160, and so on. That's a minor difference in this business, first. Secondly, they all give 100% protection against severe disease and death. So they might differ in, like if I give you the AstraZeneca vaccine, you might have a risk of a few sniffles. That means you're infected, but you're not getting sick, you know. Yeah. Pfizer, that was more impressive, less chance of sniffles. We don't make vaccines to stop you getting the sniffles, you know. We make vaccines to stop you getting severe disease. And 100%, all the vaccines now, Johnson & Johnson is the same, Novavax, CureVac, they're coming next, by the way. 100% protection against severe disease. That's how powerful they are, you know.
So some of the vaccines, so it doesn't really matter which vaccine you get, because obviously one of our panelists earlier on is going for his second vaccine.
Yeah.
Pfizer, and I think is it the Moderna? Is a single injection?
Johnson. Yeah. The only one that's single shot so far is, that's going to be launched soon, Mark. Watch. J&J is approved by the EU, but the MHRA haven't approved it in the UK, but they will. That's a single shot vaccine. Now, can you imagine when that comes out? That'll take over the marketplace. You don't need to go back a second time to your doctor or your vaccinator, do you? You know, the other ones are all 2-shot, it must be said. But no, they all are equivalent. I would never hesitate and say, whatever you're offered, take, you know, because it will protect you massively, you know.
Yeah. So even after your first injection, and you're still up at the moment up here, I think it's a 12-week lag between your first injection and your second. After the first injection, it still makes a massive difference, does it?
It does indeed. Well, the way to think of it is getting back to the Keith on earlier, the football analogy. It's a bit like you bring the players onto the field. That's the first shot, okay? And then the manager starts shouting at them. That's the second shot, okay? So the first shot kind of gets the troops going a bit, or the footballers going, and then you start to roar at them, and now they really play, you know. So the second shot is the real wake-up call, I suppose, having got them up, I suppose, in the first place, you know. And now they really are great. But the truth is, having them on the field, they're playing already. So in fact, they've shown with the Pfizer one, it's probably 80% towards its goal of 100 with the first shot. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the second shot gets you to 100%. And there's no doubt the best thing to do is to wait. The second shot really does get you going, you know. And then the second thing the second shot might do is you might persist. The protection might last a year. That's one thing we don't know, by the way. We don't know how long the vaccine will protect for. But 2 shots is going to make it last longer. Let's put it that way, you know?
Yeah.
Let's say one thing about AstraZeneca. That probably, in my opinion anyway, that's one of the more interesting of the vaccines. I'll tell you why, because people feel a bit rougher after AstraZeneca. You know, they feel a bit, you know, sore, and their arm is painful, flu-like symptoms. That's a good thing. That's getting the immune system going, you know, and you're really training the troops then, you see. So maybe AstraZeneca might give slightly longer protection than the others, but we still don't know. This is still a bit of an unknown.
And that's what I was going to ask you about, the side effects as well, because there are different people suffer different things of side effects. Is that maybe down to age, or is it down to components of the vaccine itself?
Well, no more than playing football, right? We're all different in the sense. There's some great footballers and some not so good. If your immune system is different to mine, you know, we're all slightly different, you know. So that means I might have a slightly different response than you, and I might say, oh, I had a terrible flu-like symptoms. The next day I was in bits, I stayed in bed for half the day. You might say, oh, nothing wrong with me, you know, and that's biology. You see what's called variation in the population. So those things never worry us to see this type of variation, you know, because every biological trait, whatever it is, will have variation. Height is a good example as well, you know. So we're all slightly different, and our immune systems are slightly different as well.
And just on that there, people are talking about the likes of side effects. If you look at social media, and this is something I think we need to address, and we all have sisters or wives or girlfriends or whatever. For example, there is the scaremongering going on there at the moment that the vaccine may cause infertility. So
Yeah.
how do we address it? Can you say that that's not the case, and how do we address
100% not the case. Yeah, I mean, what happened, anyway, I'd say, Mark, on this one, it's understandable people have concerns. The new vaccine, the speed thing worries people, you know, and nobody wants to be injecting a needle into themselves when they're healthy either. So we understand it's called vaccine hesitancy, and it's very understandable, you know. And then with something as massive as this, if one little rumor starts that a vaccine you might deliver your baby too quickly, or it might deform the baby, or it might change your DNA. That began to spread on social media and other places, you know. No evidence at all of that. They check that very carefully during the safety notes. Strangely, they test that in animals initially just to make sure there's no effect there. No vaccine's ever done that. So the chance of a vaccine, a new one doing it, is extremely small anyway. And then they test it. They make sure that's the case. The Pfizer trial has lots of pregnant women on it. No problem at all, you know. So that gives you an example. So, and I think what's happening as well, remember, there is the malign influence of the anti-vaxxers. And they target young women and tell them that will deform your baby on purpose to frighten them, you know, put them off. There's no evidence for that at all. If there was evidence, we'd get it out there. We'd stop using that vaccine. There's a very careful, what's called pharmacovigilance process to monitor all these things, you know. And we've remember, they've learned through history, Mark. You may remember the thalidomide disaster. In history, when I heard about this thalidomide, that deformed babies, that was back in the 50s and 60s. They learned how to watch for these things. You know, in other words, the safety profile of everything got better and better as the years went by after that disaster, you see.
So that's all very, very encouraging news. Now, if we look at the vaccines from a slightly different perspective of the variants, because we've seen what's happening in Europe at the moment, there seems to be a rise in certain parts of Europe of the virus again. Is that a variant that's now coming back?
Yeah.
How does the vaccine work against the variant?
Yeah, we knew these would come along. That's the first thing, because every time you have a virus, it can change its sort of disguise slightly. The virus is trying to survive as well. It's a battle actually between the virus and your immune system, you know, and the immune system recognizes the virus and then kills it. And then when you get reinfected, you recognize it again and you eliminate it. And vaccines do this as well. But these viruses are cunning. Every time they divide, there's a risk of a new one. It's like rolling the dice actually, you know, because it's random. And sometimes you roll the dice and it's a new variant, you see. So, and the question is then, what do these variants mean? There's tens of thousands of them, slight differences, right? But 3 of them have stood up as being of concern. They're called variants of concern, VOC, right? Now, what's happened is they've changed the spike. Now, the spike is the bit the immune system recognizes, okay? And imagine, a great analogy here is, the way the immune system works is, imagine that's the black hat on the bad cowboy, okay? So you show the black hat to the sheriff and his men, and then when the real bad guy arrives with the black hat, they recognize the black hat and they arrest the guy and then they get rid of him, you know? So the spike is the black hat, and that's the vaccine, by the way, is the spike. If a guy changes his hat slightly, which is what's happened here, the variant has a slightly different hat, different spike, then the immune system isn't quite so good at recognizing. And that was the worry, that we need to revaccinate maybe. That was a concern, you know. But we now know that the vaccines are working against the variants. They mightn't work as well because it takes the troops a bit of time to recognize the new hat, you know, it's a bit slower. But the good thing about vaccines is they bring out loads of sheriffs and cowboys. It's really huge numbers. So what you lose in quality, you make up in quantity, you know what I mean? So all cowboys get around them and eliminate them, and that works. So we're more sort of optimistic now that the vaccines will work against the variants. You may get infected though. You might have some symptoms until it gets going, but you won't develop severe disease is the idea. So we're less concerned now about those, but it is a work in progress. It's changing almost on a day-by-day basis. So at the moment, that's our current view of it. We're hoping that that's the case.
Look, if you could just give us a couple more moments, just a couple more questions to this, that we have to put to you. If you've had COVID, and do you need to, because if you've had COVID, then you produce antibodies within the body. Do you need to get the vaccine, or do you need to get both vaccines? Or if you get COVID and you get the 2 vaccines, is that you're almost super protected?
You are, exactly, yeah. Now, the advice is to get the vaccine even if you've been infected. Now, why do we say that? We're pretty confident if you've been infected, you will be protected. It's about like having a vaccine, you know, because you've trained the troops through the normal infection. Good data from the UK on that 85% protection, actually. post-infection, which is like a vaccine really, you know. But the trouble is maybe some people respond less well, they have a milder disease, they don't really get their immune system going properly. So just in case, at the moment, everybody should be vaccinated. But you're right though, it'll probably work even better in you or whoever, you know, if you've had a natural infection, because the troops are on the field. My football analogy, they've come out on the playing field. Your first shot is the shout now, you know, and that really gets them going. So no, the good news there is if you've been infected, you will have a level of protection, but get a vaccine anyway, you know, is the advice.
Another question we have come in here at the moment is, are we potentially looking at an annual jab? Because you know the way we have our flu jabs, and obviously the flu didn't take off this year, and I'm presuming, is that because we've been that much more careful about hand washing, social distance, and wearing a mask?
Yeah, exactly.
Are we liable to have a vaccine injection every year going forward, or does that really depend how long we?
That's a probability, I would say, and with these variants. So now, not everybody, just the older people and the vulnerable, just like flu. See, once we vaccinate everybody, the reason why everybody's getting vaccinated is to get rid of the virus, you know, from the community completely. That's why we're all getting vaccinated. Once we've got the virus right down to tiny numbers, then we worry only about the vulnerable, you know, and the older people. And then we vaccinate them. So they're the ones who will get the booster shot potentially every winter. I bet you what will happen, Mark, is it'll be part of the flu vaccine. Because you know the flu vaccine will have 3 or 4 variants anyway of the flu in it. So we'll probably have a vaccine with maybe 6 or 7 viral bits, components. It's never the full virus, it's the spike, remember? So we'll probably have 6 or 7 spikes, I suppose you might say, and flu in the one shot. And every winter then people will have that. And there's no harm, you know, that's a sensible thing to do, and it won't cause any problems, you know.
Another question we've got in here is from one of our participants. It's about the Wim Hof breathing technique. It's how do we, as a society, develop a more robust immunity system in relation to that Wim. If you wouldn't mind just explaining what the Wim Hof breathing technique is.
Yeah, but he's a real champion of various lifestyle practices, shall we call them. You know, for example, the cold water swimming. He was a massive advocate of that. And he has a breathing technique as well to help you relax and stuff. And he's a very good guy to look up, actually, to be honest, because that cold swimming is extremely beneficial to your health. And he was a real champion of that, you see. So we all kind of look at him and say he got it right, basically, you know. Now, what does that mean? Well, you jump in the cold, in a river, in a lake, in the sea, massive immune boost. It's amazing, you know. You can measure it in someone's body amazingly. So we've done experiments. I've seen this other labs. They measure your immune system after a plunge in the cold, or even a cold shower will do. 1/3 more immune cells are in your blood. Amazing, you know. So it is going to give you a lift, you know, a little immune. And that's only one thing. Remember, exercise is brilliant, Mark, for your immune system. The reason for that is the immune cells are in your blood, remember. If you get the blood flow going, they're churning like in a washing machine. That really wakes them up, you know. So exercise is great. Now we're talking 30 minutes 3 times a week. That's all you need. And I'm not talking about like high impact stuff. Just go for a walk, get your heart rate up, get your blood flowing, you know. Heart rate up a bit, good walk, bit of gardening, anything that gets your heart rate going, base. For 30 minutes, 3 times a week, that's all you need. Big immune boost there. Good diet, like every part of your body, you need good nutrition, you know, so we need a good balanced diet. We need good vitamin D is a big one that you may have heard of. That's useful to the immune system. Iron is very good as well. You can get these in a balanced diet, really, you know. And then the big one by far is don't be getting too stressed, because stress really damages the immune system. Now, we know this ourselves. You know, when you're stressed and you catch a cold, for example, you know, that's the stress is suppressing your immune system. A hormone called cortisol actually comes out, and that dampens the immune system amazingly, you know. So any kind of chronic stress is bad. Now, how do you de-stress? This is the big mystery that we're all struggling with, aren't we, in a sense? Whatever you want, you know, go for a walk, have a drink, you know, a glass of wine, eat some cake, play sport, listen to music, whatever turns you on, you know, just try to de-stress and try not to worry too much. I mean, one of the big things for me all through this has been, I knew that if I can just encourage people and say, look, there's a way out of it, that might help their immune systems, you know, because then there's less stress going on, you see. So it's very important to remember those guidelines, really. And social activities key, Mark. You see, one of the big stressors we've had is social isolation. We're social creatures, you know. Now, Zooming helps, let's face it, that's okay, you know. But it's okay to meet someone and go for a walk. Let's put it that way, you know, and that will really help your overall well-being in a sense, you know.
So it's just highlighting the fact that the restrictions, as they're being lifted at the moment, and everything getting back out and just walking or playing sport or doing whatever is going to make a massive difference.
Huge. Remember, it's very simple. Just by going outdoors, you're decreasing your risk 19-fold of catching this virus, right? if there's a breeze, it's like a 30, 40-fold decrease risk. It's blown away, you know. So outdoors, for the next few months, everybody move outdoors. That's my advice, right?
So the Irish weather is perfect for this type of environment then?
Well, even if it's lashing rain, try and go for a walk, you know. And go for a walk with a friend. And then if you want to play sport, is great, you know, whatever it might be, you know. And they should bring, I think you guys can play golf. Is that right up there, Mark? We're not allowed to play golf still.
And I'm not sure, it's maybe a couple of days away. I have a friend of mine who just, he's dying to get out and take some money off me. So that's going to be a bit of a...
Well, I'll tell you what, Mark, my marriage, my wife's an avid golfer, you know. If they don't bring back golf soon, I'll be having to go to the divorce court here because she's great. But I was devastated. I was lobbying for golf on her behalf. But I think golf in Ireland in Dublin was about 4 weeks away, you know. But that's a great sport. It's fantastic. Yeah, playing football, great. You know, all those things will come back in the next few weeks, basically. I guess in the UK and the North, you guys will get those ahead of us by a few weeks, I imagine, you know. But we'll all have them back in a few, you know, by about end of May, I predict in Dublin, for instance, these things should be available to us. You know, but in the meantime, use your imagination a bit, you know.
Just have to be creative. I want to put the likes of foreign travel. At the moment, for example, I have a son and he's dying to go. He's a big New England Patriots fan and he wants to go to America. But for me to tell Paddy, do I say to him just hold off for this year, no holidays this year,
I would.
holiday at home and leave it the next year, or what's the best way forward?
Especially American markets burning like a furnace over there, remember. So you wouldn't want to be going to America because the virus is rampant, you know.
Yeah.
Now, I think what will happen there will be the first sign of that changing will be they'll designate countries in Europe as green zones, they call them, you know. And that means travel between two countries will be allowed with a vaccine passport. So we will have to have some kind of certificate to show you've been vaccinated. It'll probably involve what's called an antigen test at the airport. That's just a spit test, actually, to show you're negative, you know. You fly to these green zone countries. Now, that might take, I don't know, August, September, October time, and it'll be restricted enough. It'll be based on the local numbers of the virus in the country in question. And then, you know, things like vaccination and so on. Now, America's a long way off because that's going to be a long time coming down. Watch. Now, mind you, they're doing fantastic on the vaccine front. They've done, I think, 250 million people, amazingly, you know. So it might change. It's uncertain. It is the overall view. But I'm more confident about European travel towards the end of the summer if everything's going well. You know, now it could change. This virus has bitten us 2 or 3 times, you know. So it's still, you know, a work in progress, this sort of thing. There could be bumps in the road on the way, but I wouldn't be too you know, averse to the notion, shall we say, of August, September, October time, but only in Europe.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear. And just a final question, just to wrap it up. We're very much a country that loves its sport and loves its socialization and maybe loves getting out. So to get out to watch games or to go and watch a bit of music and maybe actually go and watch yourself in your own band if you get back out playing again.
Thanks for plugging me, Mark. Thanks very much.
But again, are we probably a couple of months away before we see any sort of real development?
I think so. Now, you see, yesterday it was interesting that our Taoiseach made a big announcement, as you might have seen, and he said something very interesting. Now, I was waiting for him to say this, and I was asking them to say it really, you know. And what he said was, if 2 people are fully vaccinated, now what that means is you've had your second shot and you're 15 days after that, just to be on the safe side, you know, you can meet up indoors and do whatever you like, okay? Now what that means is now we're all vaccinated. We can all meet up indoors and do whatever we like, you know. So you can immediately see now, once we get to sort of, I guess in the UK, you guys will be getting there in June. We'll be there probably August time, right? Mass vaccination will have happened. They will allow indoor venues to reopen. They will allow the vaccine certificate to get in. That'll be part of it for them. They may say wear masks indoors, but you know, in Barcelona, they're doing a big gig with 5,000 people just to see if this is going to work already, you know. It'll be that kind of scale, you know. Now, the outdoor stuff, that's safer anyway. And on the side of a football field, you're outdoors, it's great. Again, they may have vaccination. You won't get into the Aviva or whatever the stadium is without a vaccine certificate, I bet you, for this period either. But everybody into the stadium vaccinated. Now, they won't have a full house. Like, you know, they're going to run the FA Cup probably. We've seen that, Mark. And they're going to allow... So Wembley has a 90,000 capacity, you know, and they're going to allow 10,000. It'll be that kind of thing. Now, Wembley's ideal because there's big walkways and there's loads of entrances to make sure we're all distanced and so on, you know. So we're going to move in that direction. You won't be having 90,000 people crammed into a football stadium for quite a while, let's put it that way, you know. Yeah. But we'll take little steps towards that. And then locally in our communities, they're going to allow sport again, remember, and they'll allow spectators to go, mainly because of vaccination. And you see it's the same in the UK. You can see the roadmap now. As the vaccine rate goes up, all these things kick in because we can do them safely now because we're all vaccinated with this fantastic weapon against the virus, you know. So I think we're going to head back in that direction. And certainly by the time we get to July, August, I would predict they'll open the pub, they'll open all the outdoor pubs for definite, you know.
Oh, can't wait for a pint of Guinness.
Well, I said something back, I was interviewed by the Irish Times back in February, and this Jennifer O'Connell, who's a great interview, she says to me, Luke, I'm going to ask you a few questions, just say yes, no. She said, will we be back in the beer gardens in June? And I said yes. That's all. The headline was O'Neill says back in the beer garden. So, but that I think I'm very optimistic about that. By the way, we will be back in the beer garden in June. Watch, because that's outdoors. They may restrict it a bit, you know. So you can see what I'm saying. We're going to take baby steps every week. Watch is my prediction. With the odd bump in the road, it's going to get better and better, and little baby steps towards where we want to be in the end. That end point might be a year away, fully, really, you know. But that's the direction we're headed.
No, well, listen, look. I just want to thank you. Like, that's been so enlightening this morning. I've really enjoyed that, and I hope all our participants have enjoyed it as well. I just want to thank you for coming on. Just thank you for being an inspiration and just a fountain of knowledge and speaking a language that we all can understand. So, look, thanks very much for that. Much appreciated. So if I can ask you at this stage, look, if you would just take your video off. We still have quite a number of people logged on. I know we've been on here for an hour and 3/4, but obviously there's an awful lot of information we've got through today. I just want to thank, first of all, I want to thank our the funders. So the PHA, Southern Health and Social Care Trust, Newry and Mourne, Armagh, Banbridge and Craigavon, and Mid-Ulster Councils. I would like to thank the panelists that have contributed today. So Stephen McCleary, who probably at this stage, 12:10, has just had a second job. So we're making progress. When you see that there happen, we know we're in a good place. I'd like to thank Michael McKenna from Youth Action, Tracy Powell from Southern Health and Social Care Trust, David Brown from the Church of Ireland, Sinead Trainer from Newry and Mourne District Council, Francis Hawley from Armagh, Banbridge, Craigavon Council, Collie Fowler from Men's Health Forum for their contribution to the day. You, the attendees, listen, we genuinely appreciate you all tuning in. Hopefully you've taken something from today. So hopefully you've enjoyed today as well. You found it informative, and that you'll go away and realize, look, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're almost through it. If we can hang in for another couple of months, please God, we'll get back to that unfortunate term, the new norm. But look, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Again, thanks very much for tuning in today. And just one special wee note before you all go. Myself and Francis, Kathy and Elaine Devlin, our boss is actually retiring in a couple of hours. So to Eileen Campbell, Eileen, from our perspective, we just want to say thanks very much for your help over the last couple of years. We are very much indebted to you, and we just want to wish you all the best. And again, just to all the attendees, thanks very much. We'll be in touch just for some review afterwards, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.